Hey, welcome everyone. Thanks for attending to today's webinar. My name is Greg Veltri. I'm a technical application specialist for FCS Express. And our talk today is going to be the overview of FCS Express for previous FlowJo users. And what we're going to do is just kind of discuss some tips and tricks to get you started. So we'll point out where we are doing something a little bit different, just to get you familiar using our software. For those of you who are on here, we have a area that you can select chat. You could select Q&A and show captions. So on the Q&A, ask any questions as we go along. Schoenberg is on with me, who's also with FCS Express. If you're not familiar with him, he's the president of our company, and he'll answer any questions as I go along. And then as I get to the end, I'll try to answer any additional questions that you need kind of maybe showing a little bit. And then also feel free to place in the chat or in the Q&A if you're still using FlowJo, what you hope to get out of today's talk. And we'll try to cover as much as possible to help you move along and use our software. All right, so let me just talk a little bit why people have used FCS Express. So I know this is kind of an old picture that you see here, technology convergence, but this picture kind of goes to what we all deal with when we use different softwares, and that we have to export or import different things into something. And in this example is that our phone is able to take in all these different types of technologies that we used to use individually, and we're able to carry it into a convergence of one thing. And FCS Express is very similar to that. PowerPoint, Excel, Prism, uh, any of the image type of work, cell cycle, these all converge into FCS Express. So you're not really having to export or do anything different that way. You can just use our one software and be able to utilize it for what you're using. A little background about our customer support. So if you have any questions about your software or any problems with anything else, we're located all over the world. We try to help people on all the different time zones. Myself, I'm in Denver, Colorado. So we have colleagues in the UK, Italy, etc. And we try to get to your questions within 24 hours, but it's usually sooner than that. So a little background, our software runs both on Mac and PC. You can read the data from all types of flow cytometers. So our spectral data, Cytec, Sony. We also work with Thermo. And then the latest is Beckman Coulter. We also do image cytometers. So Amnis, which is now part of Cytec, Solomix, Nextolom. And then we also have no limits on the parameters or the events in the data file. So we can do very large data files. We're able to do as many parameters as you want. So if you're one of those people doing the 40 color experiments, we're able to do that also. And then we can complete compensation and unmixing support. So we can read compensated matrix from FCS data. Also, we have a auto compensation and an unmixing wizard, which I'll briefly talk about. And then we also support the complete set of descriptive statistics. So your mean fluorescent intensity, percent gated, percent grandparents, etc. All of this can be done. The last supports all commonly used dot plot. So you'll see that we say dot plot, a contour plot, density, histogram, surface plots. And I know in FlowJo, a contour is a zebra plot, and then a density could be a pseudo color. So we're using different terminology, but we're doing all of the same things. So what I'm going to go over today is this right here in our outline. So we're first going to just talk about the anatomy of our software. Where are things? What can they do? I'll talk about some of the dockable windows. So, if you're FlowJo 10, you're doing separate plots, and I'll show you how we do more of a layout so you don't have to place your stuff into a layout. And then if you're doing FlowJo 11, you'll see that our plots are easily moved around and things like that. So there's some comparisons that we can talk about. And then also inserting the plots and objects. How do we create our plots? How do we create our gates? How do we change gates? How do we look at our hierarchy? Part two, we'll talk a little bit about unmixing and compensation. And I'm just going to go on the highlights of that. We do have videos that go through this, but I'm just going to kind of touch on it so you can see where they are and how they work. And statistics, some plot statistics, text boxes, spreadsheets, etc. And then we're going to show how we do batching, and then how we can save a layout as a template. And then I'll talk about some supports and resources. All right, so let's get started. Let me close this right here. Okay. So when we first bring up FCS Express, and this is our version is version 7, you'll see that there is kind of three groupings of this. We have recent news information. We have this area where kind of allows you to get additional information. And then where's my layouts? Can I open new layouts, etc. So let's talk about the recent news. So recent news is going to talk about what available versions are going, and FlowJo has this also. And then also we have FCS Express Academy. So we have a free academy that allows you to go interactive with the software, and it's a tutorial to teach you how to use our software. We have an easy panel integration that just occurred, and then you'll see we have a universal antibody titration, and then access to new features. So this is a nice area. If you're just wondering what's going on with FCS Express, we place that there. As for the middle section, this is kind of our help section. So videos, if you have to bring it up to date, and you'll see it says I'm up to date. Examples, so we have application examples of our software. Tutorials, the support. This is our support at novosoftware.com. And then we have a manual that you can either make it a PDF or you can have it on the web page. It's up to you. And then we also have some fact knowledge-based stuff information. And then we do announce a lot of our tips and tricks on Facebook and LinkedIn. So feel free to also go there. Over here on the far right, we have a new layout. We can open previous layouts. And then we have different files that we've been working on, and then we can bring those in also. So we're going to start out with a new layout. Have that opened already. And in this new layout, we're able to go through the software right now. So you'll see that it looks very much like a PowerPoint or Microsoft Office type of software. And we purposely did that to make it intuitive for everyone. And each of these tabs have, just like the ribbons of Microsoft and that, it goes through different things that you would want to do with your flow cytometry data. So in the home, we have paste. You got to cut, copy, and new pages, delete pages, and stuff. So I'll go through those in a moment. Then you'll see here we have a data list. This is where we're going to bring in the data. So if you're doing FlowJo, that would be your worksheet area where you brought in your data and you wanted to look at things. The other portion is the Gate Navigator. Now, the Gate Navigator is going to be a little bit different for those of you who have used FlowJo, and that our gates are global. And I'll get into that in a little bit more detail, where FlowJo uses them as data specific, which means that you have to copy and paste them into each of your data files. And then here is the layout. And this layout is made to have multiple pages. So if you wanted to have multiple different types of analysis, so you're doing that big 40-page 40 color type of analysis where you have your lymphocytes, monocytes, granulocytes, macrophages, dendritics, and all that. You can have a page for each one of those, and all of those communicate with each other. And we'll talk a little bit about that too. Down here, you'll see you're able to zoom and zoom out, and then there's different messages on here to let us know. And then you can see that I'm logged in, and if you wanted to, you can log out and someone else can log into it also. So let's talk about the tabs that we see up here. So besides home, we have insert. Insert is where we're gonna, if you wanted to do like PowerPoint, you have your text boxes, but we also have a gate view. So this is if you want to see your hierarchy view on your page, your data grid, which we'll talk, I can talk a little bit about. But here are all the plots. So we have our histogram plots, we have a color dot plot, we have a density or a pseudo color, contour or zebra, and then you'll see that there's different types of fits, multi-cycle, proliferation. We have different types of plots in the sense of kinetics, surface, dot, and subtraction. And then this is for special plots. So if you were doing imaging, you could do a picture plot. You have your spectral plot, heat maps, and then we can place an embedded spreadsheet into here, and we'll show you a little bit about that. And then there's also different types of charts we can do. So bar, pie, scatter, scatter with regression. So if you're doing any type of titration and you need a regression curve, you can do that too. And then you see we have box and whisker, Biolen, Beesworm, and Levy-Jennings. Now, design. So right now I can have my design like this, or I can change my orientation to landscape. You can change it. And the reason you'll see us doing a lot of this is that we think of our doing our analysis in FCS Express as what do I want to present? What do I want to show people with my data? What is my story with my data? And this allows you to do that. So you're going to see as we put things together, I'm going to put it together as if I was going to tell a story about the data that I'm working on so that I can then batch this if I want it into a PowerPoint or a PDF. So I can easily just go to a lab meeting or send this to a customer and say, here's your data, this is what it looks like. All right. And then in gating, we have all the other gates, the ellipse, the polygon, freeform, there's a well gate, we have markers, we have quadrants, etc. Here is our batch area. So you can see you can export just as a PDF, just as a PowerPoint on this one page, or we'll go through this about how you can do multiple data files, etc. And then we'll talk a little bit about panels. And then here's our data over here, and you'll see that the panels is over here too. We have a view header in these, and these allow you to see what's in your FCS Express. We have tools, and in our tools, you'll see we have the compensation on mixing. Transformation is for those of you who are doing data cleanup, high dimensional data analysis. I'm not going to probably get a real good chance to talk about that, but I just want to point you to it. For those of you who are doing in a kind of regulated area, you can do SOPs, you can put reports together, etc. And in view, these are just showing you different things on how you can view your screen and in the help. And this help actually allows you to really get real help. So here's the PDF that I mentioned on the web, on this computer, videos, knowledge base, etc. And if you're presently using our software and you go, I just don't know which version I'm on, if you do about my license, this will say what the version is. It'll also give the version number, your serial number, because we'll ask about that sometimes. So all that information is sitting right there for you. Now, the last item is in File. In File, we have Save, Save As, etc. And one of the kind of important things in here, you'll see that we have System, we have Security, and this allows you to, if you're in charge of your core, if you're in charge of your lab, if you need to get reports about different things, where there are failed logins, who's doing it, I could put a billing report together, etc. And then also on our options, you'll get this pop-up window. And what this pop-up window is, this allows you to set how you want to use your software. And Microsoft does the same thing under options. And we do this based on flow cytometry. So like in general, Well, in my layouts, I want to remember parameters by name, maybe not by number, because I'm changing the detectors, but I'm using the same names. So this allows me to not have to worry about changing the parameters because it'll do it automatically for me. And it goes through a bunch of series of things here. What I want to point out is our data loading. So this is talks about the instrument specific settings. So you'll see that we are able to work with many, many different types of instruments, like I mentioned. Um, You'll see over here that we have even Thermo Bigfoot. We have the Fax Discovery S8, Novasite. You'll see we have Sony ID7000, the SciTech. And when you select one of these, what this will do is it has the instrument name, it has the identification rule, which is in the FCS file. It says how you can name your parameters. Do you want it name and stain? Do you want it stain and name, stain, name, etc.? But this allows you to select here. Right now, we do a very good job of automatically seeing the data files for what they are. But if you feel like you want them to be a certain way based on your instrument settings because you've moved it more to the left or move it more to the right on these axes, you can then say, I always want the plots to be the certain way. And then when you get into your spectral data, you can say on your spectral data, well, I want to load both the raw and unmixed data, or you can just raw just the unmixed data because you don't use the raw data and you don't use spectral plots. But a lot of different choices, a lot of different ways to do this, but this is here to help you to bring in your data easily. And then we have all these other different things. And then we have something called our performance. So if you feel like your performance is slowing down for some reason, you can enable the cache, you can increase the size, etc. So let's bring in some data. Now that we've kind of gone through a brief summary of what we have here. So let me get some data here for us. So what I have here is 6 samples, or 8 samples, excuse me. And which, now we could bring them in a couple of ways. We can, please don't raise your hand, just write in the questions and answers, and then I'll be able to answer your question, or Sean will be able to answer your question for you, okay? All right, so I can bring in data by hitting the plus sign here, which would go navigate to my folders, or I can drag in data. So I'm going to just drag that in there so that you can see it. The order is going to be based on what your Finder window has this in. So if I had sample 8 up here and sample 1 down here, it would go in that order. Now, the data list, as you can see, has iteration and file name. So iteration is just what's the number? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. I can select these and I can move them in any order that I want them to. Um, and then the other thing that you have done in FlowJo probably is, well, I have them in different groups. So how do I get my data into different groups? So there's a couple ways of placing your data into groups or iteration groups. And one way is to go to the data tab and you'll see that we have an increment value and I can group them. So I have right now there's 2 files together, there's 3 files together, etc. Or let's say I have an unstained and then I'm going to do all of my samples. So I can then create controls to them. And if I have FMOs, I can do that too. But you'll notice that it just says controls and it just says a number. So that's where panels come into play. Panels act like groups for you. What you can do is you can say add, you can give it whatever name that you want to it. Um, let's say lymphs. And then I can say how many tubes I have. So let's say I have maybe just 1 sample tube per experiment that I'm doing, but then my controls are going to be a little bit more. I may say that I have a couple of these, and then my names would be, this would be my unstained. And then this would be FMO1. FMO2, etc. And just for purposes, we'll just keep it down to this. And if I click OK, you'll see now that I have my controls unstained, FMO1, FMO2, and then I can have my files lined up with the names that I have there. Okay. If I want to get rid of that, I just go to Panels, and then I can deselect that and click OK, and then it goes back to that. But I wanted to point that out because this is something a little bit different than what you may be used to in FlowJo, and that you just placed it into the compensation group and you just placed it into this group. So you're able to create, you have more control over your groups in the sense of how you do your panels. Right. So now that we have it in there, let's create some plots, right? So let's take a sample one and create a plot into here. Now, you're used to double clicking and then bringing and then having a plot create itself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select on this file name. I'm just going to drag it. And you'll see that there's a little plus sign on my arrow. And what that's doing is it's going to allow me to create plots. Now I can create multiple plots. I can create a histogram. I can create a density plot, a color dot plot. And if I had a spectral plot, I could do a spectral plot. So this experiment right here is just 6 colors. I forgot which instrument it is off of, but very basic and simple. So I'm just going to do this to show you. I'll click OK. And here are our plots. Let's put this here. Let's move this here. All right. So right now, this plot is time versus forward scatter. If you click on here on the parameter, you can change the name. If you have a lot of names on here, you're doing the big experiment, you can just type in the CD marker or the fluorochrome, and it'll pop up. And then I can do side scatter versus that. And this is, as you can see, this is just human peripheral blood. I have my lymphocytes, monocytes, granulocytes. So we'll work with that. Now, there's a couple of things to this plot that we can do. If I right click on this plot, I can format this and I can format the axes, the color levels, but I'm going to go to color levels just so that you can see this. So if I wanted to change the way that these colors look, I could do like a fixed range. I can make it look a little bit more like you're used to looking at it. Whatever you want to do. And then if I like this, I can then go into options and have my plot color levels always be like this. So up to you, but these are things that you can do with our software. Okay, so let's do that. And then let's create a gate. All right, so if I create a gate, I go to gating, and let's just create this gate here. And we're going to call that lymphocytes. Oops, mistake. Let's get this quick caps. We'll click OK. Now, a couple of things have happened automatically for me when I did this. So you'll notice the gate navigator now says lymphs. So we're now going to see our hierarchy that we created here. You'll also see over here that we have a dialog text box that says the percentage of lymphocytes that are in this plot. Now, I also noticed on purpose, I did this, which is, a rectangle gate is probably not the best gate for this population because it kind of comes like this, and I'm missing out some things, and I don't want to bring this all into my monocytes. So what I can do is I'm going to select polygon, and I'm going to draw a polygon around this. Now, I'm not going to delete the lymphocytes. What I'm going to do is just replace it. And if I select replace, it's now a polygon, and my hierarchy didn't need to be changed, deleted, or anything like that. So this is nice if I was really way in the weeds of my hierarchy, that I don't have to move or change anything. I can just replace it. Now, for my lymphocytes, I would probably want to go to another item. So let's go you would usually double click on this, but for us, what you just do is you click on this and you drag it and then release. And now you get a new plot. And your new plot will be the same size as this. Um, and it obviously has the same parameters, but you can change those. So we're going to do CD3. So on our plots, you'll see up on top is the title. We have the sample name of the file name, and then it says no gate and it says lymphocytes. If I want to change this, all I have to do is click on that lymphocyte and you'll see I get the hierarchy here, and I can select it to be no gate or lymphocytes. So again, a nice little tool to allow you to change that. Now, the other thing is that, you can see that it's kind of sitting, some dots are sitting out here a little bit. And if I want to tighten that, I can. So what we have is, if you right click on this, you can go show axis scale adjuster, and you can just slide this so that you can get this the way that you want it to look like. And then I can then hide it. Now, if you want to do further, like change the range and things like that, if you select the plot, you go over here to axes, and on the axes, you can then select Y or X. So let's select X, and then you can change the scale here. You can change the minimum setting and then how you want your range and resolution to be. So that's all there for you to adjust. Now, let's create a gate for our CD3 positives. And then from our CD3 positives, let's move this over here to another plot. And let's make this CD4 and CD8. All right, so let's do the same thing, just to show you again. So let's right click on this. Let's show the scaling. Let's adjust this a little bit, make that a little tighter, make that a little tighter, okay? And then if I right click, I'll hide those. And right now everything looks good, but it does look a little dim, right? So maybe I didn't collect enough events on this. So what we can do is, if I go to overlays, I can change the dot size. And I'm not changing the data. All I'm doing is I'm just pulling it out. So I'm just increasing the dot size so I can see that better. Now we've done a rectangle, we've done a polygon. Let me show you a quadrant. So I can click on a quadrant, and then I can select here. And on my quadrant, I have the choice of how I want to name this. So I can name this based off of CD4, CD8. I can make the quadrants be a different name, but this is the example it's going to be. And this works for me also. And you'll see down below, we also can make this a data specific gate. So the quadrant will be, wherever I place it, it will be specific to this data file. So I'm going to click OK and keep it just the way it is right now. And there we go. So let's do this. Let's just put this over here so you can see it. And this is our histogram. And on my histogram, let's do CD4. And right now it's on no gate. So let's do it off of CD3 positive. And this is exactly what I was talking about before. And let's just get rid of this. Okay. So we've created a couple of plots. We've got some gates. And then if we look over here, we can see our quadrant gates also, CD3 plot, and then the hierarchy. Now I mentioned to you in insert the gate view. So if I click on the gate view, we'll put it right here. If I right click, I'll just expand it all just like that. And what this is that I want to be able to see this when I go to do a PowerPoint, or if I do a PDF on this. I have my whole hierarchy just sitting right there so that I can see that. And let's just put out a little bit like that so you can see. Okay. So anything that's on the gray will not be able to go on the PDF, but it will go in PowerPoint. And I'll show you that in a bit too. So right now, this is sample one. If I click on the number, it will go to sample two, it'll go to sample three, four, etc. Now, let's find one where I need to move the gate a little bit. It's very specific to it. So let's go to, what's it look like? We use this one. So I want to make this data specific. So I'm going to click on this gate. I'm going to go to gating, and it says data specific gate, and I'm going to select that. If I click on that, it's now a data specific gate, and you'll see it says lymphocytes data specific gate, and I'm going to move it and drag it to where I want it to be. And maybe just so that you can see, I'm showing you, I'm going to make it a little extreme so you can tell the difference. All right. So now let's go to number one. There's number two, number three, etc. So this allows you to, if you were doing a real experiment, and I had it unstained, I had several FMOs, and I had this layout here, what I would do is I would go from my unstained, I'd move my gate to my unstained area for my negative populations. Then I would go through each of my FMOs and I would adjust the gate. Now, I don't have to copy each one because this is global. So that allows me to go through each of my controls and be able to, at the end for my sample, to have the right gating positions that I don't have to change or copy and paste if I were doing something else like FlowJo. All right. So this is very nice that way. Now, the next thing I'd like to kind of show you a little bit, we got this all here, is that I want to show a little bit about compensation and unmixing on here. So we're going to save this, and we're going to create a new layout. And let's go to Tools. And in the Tools, I have compensation and unmixing. And this brings up this pop-up window. And another thing that we have about our windows is that we can use this compass arrow here to say where we want to place it. So I can put it over here, I can put it up on top if I want to, down here, over there, etc. So I'm going to put it over here. I can also resize these windows easily by just dragging that like that. And then let's make this a little smaller so we can see a little better. There we go. All right. In the compensation unmixing wizard window, you can do compensate or you can unmix. So let's do compensate real quick. So I'm going to select compensate, and it goes through each of the steps. And unmixing does the same thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select some files. So let's go to our compensation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my unstained, and I'm going to select my controls. I'll do open, and then it all comes in. So the way that this works is that you have your file data name here. You have the parameter that you're working with. If it's wrong, you can change it. And then also the negative control. So this is for conventional flow cytometers. So the Fortessa, the LSR2, things like that. Anything that's not spectral, we're using this. So then it's going to say, how do I want to do my gates? Well, I want my forward scatter, side scatter gate. There's no errors or warnings. There's no parameters to adjust and anything like that. So it automatically calculated it. So believe it or not, the compensation is done already. And that our APC, if I go through each of these tabs, have the markers automatically on them. And then PE side 5, PE side 7, PE, and then we have our spillover, and we have our cross-stream unmixing. And you'll see that in the compensation and unmixing, it's also right here too, okay? So all of this information is actually a file that we can save. And the way that you save that is just going to here, the save button, and then you can save it there. Now, this is a little bit different than FlowJo in that we're doing it outside of another layout, but they're all, the software is open, so I can then save this as just my compensation information. The reason being is if I wanted to have multiple compensations, I can. So let's say this was a compensation on cells only, compensation on beads. I'm trying different types of clones to see how things are going. I can have a list of different compensations here because the way that I would look at this is then I would go into a new layout. I'd bring in my compensation that I saved. So I go to tools, I go to compensation, and you'll see that I have this little folder here. And then here is my compensation that I saved earlier just to have it to make things quicker. But if I click on here, you'll see that all that information is there for me. So let's move that over here for a moment. And let's bring in a file so I can show you. So let's get rid of area. Let's just put a gate around that real quick. I'll just call it gate 1 for now. Put this here. And look for something. They did a really good job with this. But what I would do is I would apply this to selected plots or all the plots. Okay. Now, let's say this isn't the way I want it. Like this CD4 maybe should be lower. So I can right click on this and I can show compensation adjusters. And this allows me, if you used Clusa, you're able to adjust this to the way that where you want it to be. And then it'll be saved. And you'll see that this turned red. And that's because we just adjusted the compensation. And we can save this as a new compensation also. So you have a lot of choices on our compensation. It may not be part of like the worksheet with FlowJo, but this allows you to then bring in the other compensations. Now there's the same thing with our unmixing. So let's bring in a new layout for that real quick. And let's do unmixing real quick. And same thing, I bring in my data files. But the thing about your data files, and this is with Sony data or with SciTech data, is that you have a raw and you have an unmixed. So we're going to be using the raw data. And I'm going to go to my reference group. And you'll notice that I have A1, AF1, AF2. So I actually, what I did was on my unstained, if I have more than one autofluorescence, I'm able to create multiple autofluorescence and use it in our wizard. And that's what I'm going to show you. So I took the unstained and I made 2 copies and I called them 2 different names. And if I select all of those and click open file, I have all that in there. So what's going to be different is that I have the labels, but the sample. The sample in spectral is that I can do sample, negative, or autofluorescence. So this is an autofluorescence control. And this is an autofluorescence control. And you'll see that the negative control unstained was automatically applied to all of this. So this is all good. So then forward scatter, side scatter, that's fine. The thing that it's turning red, it's because it's asking me what parameters, which is really which lasers. So I'm doing violet, blue, and red. Once I select that, you're going to see my mouse go kind of a little crazy because what it's going to do is right down here, it's going to create all those tabs just like it did for compensation. The error that you see here is not really an error. It's a warning when it's yellow. And all that means is that my unstained autofluorescence 2 and autofluorescence 1 was found off of the same detector. That's fine. That's really, it should be that because that's what we're working with. And then if I needed to change the detector for some reason, I can change the detector right here. So I can go to AF1 and AF2, and I can say, well, maybe that should have been detector number 8, and this should be detector number 9. Whatever you want it to be, you can change it to that. So you have that flexibility. And then the same thing happened just like I mentioned in compensation. We have all the separate windows. Um, This right up here is for my unstained, um, and also for my fluorescence. So here's my CD3. So what I want to show you with our spectral data is that these markers are doing everything live. So if I'm looking for my negative versus my positive signal that's on my spectrum, I'm able to look at that while I'm doing this. So then if I go to my CD14, it had a hard time because the population is over here, right? But CD14 doesn't really sit in the side scatter lymphocyte area. So if I click on this, and this is where we were talking about having data specific. So for this data of my CD14, I can change this, and you'll see that my peak will change. And really, that was a negative autofluorescence area. And let's move this over here. And now I can also see on my spectral curve that I do have that. And it goes on and on, all the different ones. The other thing I'd like to show you quickly, you have your AF1 and your AF2, so you would have to identify if this is peripheral blood, so it's not really going to have that many autofluorescence, maybe the eosinophils, but this was just an example to show you where it is and how to do it. But you can also visualize your matrix. You're able to look at this matrix and see how are things going with this. In addition to doing that, in the compensation and unmixing, you'll see that we have an icon here called Compare Reference to Spectral and Easy Panel. So if you wanted to compare this assay and your controls and things like that, Easy Panel is in the Dotmatics family, and so is Omic. And we work all together trying to help you have better tools. So Easy Panel can then take the spectral information here. It will export to Easy Panel if you're using it. If you have questions about it, please ask us about it. We'll point you how to get a trial and things like that. But it allows these two to communicate each other so that you can check how your spectrum is doing. And I know, these are new tools that are developing out here, but we've really made a nice thing here to help you guys out. All right, so we've gone through part one and we've gone through part two. So let's bring in back to where we were previously with this. So in this layout right now, I have everything that I would want per se in the sense of how I want to analyze things, right? But what I don't have is statistical information. Now, what you would normally do maybe is you would export your statistics to Excel. You would export your statistics to that layout in FlowJo or something like that. Well, I'm going to show you what we can do to make this a little bit easier for you. So if we go to Insert and let's do a text box first. And I'll draw this text box right here. This text box can be whatever you want it. You can put your logo here, but I'm going to put the date. And I'm not going to type in the date because my data files are going to change constantly on me. So if I right click on here, I can insert a token and I can go to statistics or I can go to keywords. I'm going to go to keywords. And the other thing is system, because system will also have the current date, but I want the date of my sample. So I'm going to do keyword and I'm going to do insert. Now you may be saying to yourself, Greg, what is tokens? So tokens is just information. So you can have statistical information, you can have keyword information, but all a token means is information. So I'm going to go to the keyword and I'm going to select these three dots right here. And this is the information that is in the FCS file. This is how an FCS file does its list mode, data information, stuff like that. And you'll see that it says the cytometer was Big Al. Okay. I know we all named our cytometers. But what I'm looking for is the date, which is right here. So I'm going to click OK. And I click OK here again. And now the date's here. So if I go to another data file from another date, that date will change automatically for me. Now, if I have information that maybe is really important for those of you who are in CROs, or you just want something to look at some key statistics, let's say, what is the number of CD3s that I'm going to get all the time? Well, what I can do is I can just drag in this right into here, the gate right there. It's going to have CD3 plus. I'm going to put the number of events and I'm going to click OK. And if I move this, you'll see that all of this is live. So that number will change too. Now, another thing that I can do is the spreadsheet that I mentioned. So let's select spreadsheet and click OK. And let's move this over here. Now the spreadsheet, I can do multiple things. I can drag in a plot. So let's like select this plot here. I'll drag this right here. I'll click OK. I'm going to use statistical information. I want all 4-quadrant information. I want the file name to be there. I want the number of events. Oops. And then I want the percent gated from the plot. And if I click OK, all that information's there. Now, what's nice about this embedded spreadsheet is it exactly works like an Excel spreadsheet. I don't have to sit there with multiple windows figuring out which one it is or dragging the information over there. So what I can do, sorry, I have a window that you guys can't see that's blocking the information I'm trying to see. Let's do this. And I can go to Format, I can go to Layout, and in the layout, you'll see that I have a lot of the stuff you have in a Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, I can wrap the text, so now I can see the number of events, I can see all the statistics that go along with that are there for me. If I need to see it further, I can spread it out like that. Since we're doing one, let's just do that right there and bring that there. Okay. Now, this is the statistics on this one data file, sample one. If I move the quadrant, you'll see that the statistics are also going to move at the same time. If I change the data file, it's also going to change the information, etc. Now, because I see we're kind of running a little low on time. So what I can also do, if I wanted to, it's only one data file, so it's not going to be the best, but I can do a chart. I can do like a bar chart. And what that bar chart is going to do, it's going to take whatever I have on my spreadsheet, it's going to place into here. So you can see I have the number of events based on the percent gated. So if I wanted to change that, same axes here. I can change all of that. I can change the format. I can change the color of it, etc. And I can make it off of however I want it to be, etc. So a lot of different things here. And you can see why when I first mentioned this, how we kind of say to ourselves, how do I want to put my layout together? Or how do I want to present my story to someone about my data? That allows you to do that here. You go, all right, you know what? I want to show them that I have 45, I have CD3, I'm going to 4s and 8s, and then maybe I want to show an overlay, which I'm going to show in a moment after I do some batching real quick. All right. So, and then statistically, it's whatever you want to do statistically on here. You can also select a column, cell, and if you go to formulas, you can add different formulas. So we have different statistic tests, just like you would do if you were doing this in Excel, right? So now that I have all this here, I'm going to batch through all of this information real quick for us. So in batching, you have action and report. So I'm going to go to action and report. In an action report, you'll see that we have PowerPoint. So let's select PowerPoint. What it's going to ask me is, do I want to open the presentation after savings? Yeah, I do. And then what kind of quality? I want the highest. And then I can also do just one page. I could do multiple pages, etc. And then if I was doing a study, I can append onto it if I needed to. And then lastly, where do I want to save it? So let's go to my folder, and let's call that the PowerPoint. Save that and click OK. And now that's going to come up right over here also. You'll also see the PDF. So same thing. I want this to be my highest quality. I'm going to combine the outputs together so it's not a separate file for each one. And then I'm going to say the same thing. I'm going to save that. And I'm going to click Save. I'm going to click OK. Now, there are two things here. So I have a Prism and Luma. Now, the Prism is our one of our family members of the Dotmatics, if you've worked with Prism, and you can export to Prism. We have a web page that it goes through a bunch of tutorials on that. And if you like to have that link, you can ask us or you can email us as support. And then Luma is the latest thing that we've been working on. Luma is our newest product that brings all of the products together and allow them to communicate with each other. So if you're doing Genius, you're doing Prism, you're doing FCS Express, Omic, and Easy Panel, these will all communicate easily together. And then you can also add other kinds of protein or genomic type of programs to communicate. And what it does is it's smart enough to kind of show where the data is and how they talk to each other and communicate and where you see trends and different things. And then last thing we're going to do is Excel. So I'm going to do Excel here. I'm going to say where I'm going to save it first. And then I'm going to click OK. And what I'm going to do with the Excel is that you'll see that there's nothing under it. Now in FlowJo, you would have a separate window and you would select different things. But what I can do is I can select on a plot. I can drag that plot in there, do a statistic token. It's going to be on my lymphocytes. I want the file name first. I want the number of events. And it's kind of like the spreadsheet we just did. And I'm going to say I want the amount of cells, and I'm going to click OK here. So now they're listed. And these check marks mean, well, maybe I don't need to batch all the information. So if you just need to batch one thing, you could deselect the others and do the same thing. I can also select on a gate and drag the gate in here. And there's a CD3. I want the number of events. I want the percent on the plot, and I'll click OK. So now they're just lining up. And I would do the same thing with other stuff if I had it here. And the way that they're listed, that is going to be the order of the column. So it's going to go from left to right for the columns. So file name first, and then the lymphocytes, and then the CD3 positives. Okay. Now that I have that, I can then select run. Now in the run, what I want to do is make sure I am on the first file that I'm working with. And then I select that. And as you can see, it's processing all that, and it's going through each one of these. I could pause this if I wanted to, so that is an option. So if I want to do data-specific gating with, as I go through this, I could just pause and then say, nope, this needs to be changed, this needs to be changed, and then you're all set to go. So you can QC your work as you go. So this first thing that popped up was the PowerPoint. And in our PowerPoint, you'll see I have each of the individual files. Just a quick thing to talk about our PowerPoint is that you can select one of these and you can right click and you can go to group and ungroup these. And if I select one of these things, I can change them. And so I don't say change this, but maybe I had the wrong marker and it's supposed to be CD4 or something else, etc. But if you also notice, we'll zoom into this, we get very high resolution publication type data. So really nice, easy for you to publicate your data by just using our software. So let's close this. And then when we bring up Excel. So No real surprises here. This is the same as we were doing inside our embedded spreadsheet, but this is for all the samples. And you'll see that I can then have all the statistics here that I was having before, and then I can make some charts or stuff like that also. And then the PDF is the same way. So I have all this information. I want to make this into a template. So I go to File, I go to Save As, and I'm going to go to my folder, and I'm going to call this my template for 6 colors. And then I'm going to close this. Okay. You'll see on my splash screen, it automatically updated, and there it is. So I don't even have to navigate to it. I'm going to click on that, and I made a mistake because it's going to open up as embedded data, okay, and link to it. What I should have done was I should have gone to File, Save As, and my apologies. You have linked with data, which I just did. So you know how to do that. And that's something that you usually do. But if I do unlinked with data, that will make it a template. So let's do save. I'm going to replace that. Close this. Okay. And now all I have to do is to bring in that data files. And do open files. And then if I select this one right here, I have a tool here that I can change all the data on the data plot, and it's then there, and then etc. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of how we do things in FCS Express compared to FlowJo. Let me bring up PowerPoint for you. All right. So what I also like to mention is that we're also able to uh, do different types of heat maps like I talked about, large data sets. We could do a multi-plot. So if you wanted to see how your compensation or unmixing went, you can do that too. These multi-plots can also be used for high dimensional data analysis. So your TISNI, UMAP, FlowSum, all of those you could do. R and Python are integrated into here, so you don't have to download R. I mentioned spectral data and unmixing. We have the image. We also do cell cycle, proliferation analysis. We have a lot of different resources to help you with this. If you don't have FCS Express already, you can get a 30-day trial for free. There's no limitations. So whatever you do on your trial, you can do on our software. So you're able to take your real data, analyze it, and use it and see how it really works. Okay. The other thing that we have on our support webpage is videos. So getting started with FCS Express, there are FlowJo videos in there. There are some FlowJo videos in and when I say FlowJo videos is in the sense of kind of what I'm talking about, but maybe a little bit more detailed, and then also in our compensation and unmixing. But you'll see that we have high dimensional data analysis. We have a 5-video series that goes through how to use the cleanups, how to normalize the data, how to automatically scale the data, and then how to use then the clustering and high dimensional data analysis tools. And then we go through what tokens are and statistical tokens, etc. We have a lot of different tools to help you out to get where you want to be. I want to thank you. I hope this was really helpful. I hope that this was able to really show you the power of FCS Express, but how you can transition from FlowJo onto our software easily with not any problems and some of the tricks and trades. So let's see, how do you get some questions? How do you get the iterations to all appear in the batch analysis? I can currently get one sample to be generated on a PDF. Do I have something not selected? This was from an anonymous attendee. Maybe it would be best if you write to, as we have here, support@denovosoftware.com, and we'll do a team meeting with you to help you out with that, also with your PDF and stuff like that. But let me just show you one thing that may help you with your question is that if you put multiple data samples into the layout that you have, so let's say like sample 2, I'm going to overlay this onto here. You'll see that, let's do number 3. Let's change this to number 2. You'll see how things are graying out here. Okay, so usually the gray out means that you have multiple data samples in there, and so it's only going to batch what's blue and not gray. So what I would first do is look at your layout and see if you did that. If you did that, then maybe you need to think about how you grouped it, right? So that goes back to what I was talking about in the panels or the increments of the value of how many are you putting together, right? So if you see if I do this, right, 1 and 2, and then 3 is grayed out. So it may be something like that. Okay. Do we have any additional questions? All right. Look, everyone, I want to thank you again for coming to our webinar. Again, please, if you have any questions, go to support@denovosoftware.com. You will receive an email in 1 week with the video link to my talk today. So if there's something you wanted to see again, you'll be able to see it there in that link that we will provide to you in the email. And then if you're interested in a 30-day trial, go to our website or even email again at support@denovosoftware.com and we'll help you out. We're always available and we do team meetings and things like that to really help you use our software and help you with your data analysis. So again, thank you very much. I hope you have a wonderful week and hope to talk to you all soon.